how do you live with yourself when you cannot tell the truth to even your closest family members? This is something they have to adjust to. I could never do it. But having talked to the children of spies here in town, several of them had no idea. Their parents died, and they found out through going through their paperwork that dad was a spy. I've heard one woman say, all of a sudden, I realized why we had 3 different passports, why we lived in so many countries. Dad always said he was a consultant. We did not know he was with intelligence.
This is Story to Count with Jen Jumba. In conversations with writers, something magical happens, and as readers, we begin to see them as human beings and not just the name on the spine of a book. My hope is through these conversations, you learn about their craft and them as a person. You'll become like me, fiercely loyal, want to read their current book, entire backlist, any future book, or any book they blurb. And when you see their name, you'll want to support them, not only as incredible storytellers, but also the thoughtful individuals you have come to know. And I'm beyond excited because my guest today is internationally best-selling author Tess Gerritsen, who took an unusual route to a writing career. She graduated from Stanford University, went on to medical school at the University of California, San Francisco, and was awarded her MD. While on maternity leave from her work as a physician, she began to write fiction. And in 1987, her first novel, Call After Midnight, was published. It was just one of 31 suspense novels she's written. She also wrote a screenplay, Adrift, which aired as a 1993 CBS Movie of the Week starring Kate Jackson. Tess's first medical thriller, Harvest, was released in 1996, and it marked her debut on the New York Times bestseller list. Started a trend because her novels have hit bestseller lists ever since. She's award-winning, won both the Nero Wolfe Award for Vanish, the Rita Award for The Surgeon, and Publishers Weekly has dubbed her the medical suspense queen. That's great because it also fits on a business card. Time magazine named her novel, The Surgeon, one of the best mystery thriller novels ever written. Her series of novels featuring homicide detective Jane Rizzoli and medical examiner Mara Isles inspired the hit TNT TV series Rizzoli and Isles starring Angie Harmon and Sasha Alexander. But wait, there's more. Tess is also a filmmaker. She and her son Josh produced a feature-length documentary, Magnificent Beast, about the ancient origins of the pig taboo. It aired on PBS channels around the country. Their previous film, Island Zero, was a feature-length horror movie released in 2018. And I'm super excited to be talking to you about your next book in this magnificent Martini Club series, The Shadow Friends.
Well, it's great to be here, and it's fun to talk about these characters because I feel like they're friends, even though they don't really exist.
I feel the same way, and I think most readers will agree that you do a wonderful job of creating people who have had these amazing careers, as you have had an amazing career, but they're perfectly imperfect people. And you capture that so beautifully that, yes, I feel like they're my friends. And the book I want to read and keep turning page after page, but at the same time, I want to slow down because I don't want it to end, because that means I'm going to have to wait about a year or so until I can hang out again with these people.
Well, one is coming. One is coming, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So Shadow Friends, this incredible ensemble cast, this is the third in the series of the Martini Club, which is wonderful, and who wouldn't want to be part of that? But this is a really unique ensemble cast because they had unique careers prior to ending up in Maine in a town named Purity. Would you like to introduce us to these characters?
Yes, they're actually based on people I semi-know in my own hometown. There are 5 people in this group. One of them is Maggie Bird, whose story is told in the first book, The Spy Coast. Then there's Declan, who is was a covert operative. There's Ingrid Slocum, who was a covert operative. And there's Ben Diamond. And the 4 of them met in training when they were just CIA recruits. There is a 5th member named Lloyd, who was an analyst. So he spent his career sitting at a desk at Langley, but he and Ingrid fell in love, so he's joined the group, even though he has no history as a covert operative. So here they are. They're retired. They're living in a small town in Maine called Purity. They can't really talk about their careers to outsiders, so they hang out together. They have martinis. They have potlucks. They actually even have a book club, although they often fail to read the book. It's really just
As some book clubs do.
it's an excuse to get together and eat and drink a lot. And so they're living a nice, quiet retirement life. And there is a sixth member who's not really an official member, but she's the local police chief. She's a young woman named Jo Thibodeau in her 30s, a good, solid Maine girl who's really never been out of the state very much. And when she first meets these five people in the very first book, she doesn't know their histories. And little by little, she's starting to glean that they have a unique backstory and that sometimes they come in handy when she's trying to solve a crime.
Yeah, she is a terrific character. And it's one of those things when I read the first book, I'm thinking, if I were the chief of police in a small town like Jo is, and these people were like, you need to do this and you need to do this, and this was the type of weapon used and this was this, I'd be like, how is it possible that you know that?
Yeah, she's sort of every woman. I imagine ourselves being inside Jo and trying to make out who these five people are and why they always seem to be ahead of me when it comes to investigations. And it's also fun because it's a generational gap. She's young and they're in their 60s and 70s and beyond. And as it is with a lot of older people, they tend to be dismissed. People, we don't look at old people and think, wow, what a great backstory you have. We just think, oh, what a nice granny. I hope, I hope she can make it home in her car. But these five are totally able to do, well, not just to outthink her, but they still have all their faculties.
Right. I mean, and it's incredibly refreshing to see that group of individuals. And it, I think, speaks to a little bit of their background. I mean, working for the CIA for as many years as they did, in the CIA, obviously, you not just need to be really smart in order to do that, but also physically agile to do some of the things, the situations that they put themselves in. And I would think when the time comes to retire, that it's really hard to leave that type of life behind. Everything else is kind of like people who are like F1 drivers. I think, like, how do they just drive to the grocery store? It has to be incredibly,
I know.
incredibly boring.
Well, that's one of the things I wanted to explore when I started this was I first heard Maggie Bird's voice in my head, and she said to me, "I'm not the woman I used to be," and so that started the journey. Was I wanted to know who did she used to be, but a lot of it is that I've gotten older. I couldn't have written this book 30 years ago, but now that I am the age of my characters, I'm very aware of maybe people don't pay attention to older people. I mean, I myself, I go to the grocery store and I see a gray-haired lady pushing her cart, and I don't stop to think, wow, what kind of a life did you have? Or did you used to carry a gun? The kinds of things that we don't think about when we see older people. And yet in my town, I am surrounded by some of the most well-traveled, intelligent, globally aware people that you can ever come across.
And it's fun to see that in your books. I know in the first book, The Spy Coast, making sure I'm getting this right because I've read them all, and they all have an S in the name, so I have to be careful. Spy Coast opens in Bangkok. And having been there a couple years ago, I was, this is so fun to see places that even if you haven't traveled, you give a great sense of what that place is like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's refreshing to see people who want to travel, the like-minded individuals who want to explore what the world has to offer. Now, most of us will explore the world not as a CIA covert op. However,
hopefully not.
Hopefully not. I mean, you just don't know people's backstories. And I think that's one of the things that you bring up in the book is how, because of their age and their physical demeanors, how easy it is for them to just blend in.
Yeah, I think that the rule of this is just never underestimate somebody, no matter what they look like or how old they are. You just don't know who people really are until you actually sit down and get to know them.
Right. And I think you do a wonderful job with these characters. Maggie is such a terrific character, and they all complement one another. This incredible ensemble cast.
They all are slightly different. I mean, Maggie, we know, she was a very serious and very dedicated operative.
Mm-hmm.
But then we have Ben, who is, he's kind of the thug of the group. I mean, if anybody needed muscle, you'd call in Ben. And then there's Declan, who was the diplomat's son, whose real stress, I mean, his superpower is diplomacy. He can talk
Besides
his way.
His hair. He's got really
Besides his beautiful hair, I know. Plus the fact that he's still pretty good looking in his 70s.
Right.
So yeah, everybody brings a different strength to this group, and they call on those strengths when needed.
Right, which I think is really fun. This is the third. So this is a new case that they're facing.
Yes.
They've had a couple instances previous, but this book, this is something that I read the very first page and I could feel that in the pit of my stomach. It's a global conference to talk about global catastrophes and talk about the possibility of weaponizing disease. They talk about smallpox, and I'm horrified reading that this is something that is a possibility. I know this is fiction, and at the same time, sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, but what was the research like going into that to figure out that this is the case that they're going to be tasked with?
Well, first of all, let me give you some background on this conference, this fictional conference. It actually is based on a real conference that we have in my little town. I have a town of 5,000 people, and we're full of retired CIA and State Department. So about 40 years ago, they started something called the Camden Conference. And every year, experts from around the world fly to our little town in the middle of winter to give a conference, to put on a show about global affairs. So the Global Affairs Conference in this book is based on a true conference, and the audience tends to be full of retired CIA and State Department. The subject that I came up with for the plot is about global catastrophes. What can the world anticipate that will go wrong, that will affect every country on Earth? And the one thing I can think of beyond nuclear war is disease. And we've just gone through COVID, so we understand what that is. But see, COVID was only a 1% mortality. I mean, that's horrible. But then you look at something like smallpox. None of us are, the young ones anyway, they're not immunized against smallpox. And that had a mortality rate of, 20%. What if Ebola is weaponized? What if H5N1, takes over? So that was what I wanted to focus on. Not only that disease is there, it's always mutating, but there are some countries that are thinking about weaponizing it. And people maybe not be aware that smallpox, even though we eradicated it, is still in existence in two different labs. The Russians have a sample of smallpox, and I'm assuming that we have smallpox. And we use it for the possibilities of research, number one. And number two, if the other side releases it, we want to have a sample so we can develop vaccines right away.
Correct.
So anyway, these two weapons are sitting in labs somewhere. And I think the danger, at least probably for, the U.S. government for intelligence when they're thinking about this, is rogue warriors, rogue actors who somehow get into that Russian lab and get hold of that smallpox virus and then release it on the world.
It's an incredibly unsettling thought. And at the same time, I think if there's a conference that is pulling some of the best minds in the world together in one spot to talk about an issue, then that makes me hopeful that there is a possible solution or a plan or several plans in place should this happen. That we'll be able to know what to do and respond quickly.
I think there are probably plans. The question is whether we have the willpower to enact them. And we've just seen with COVID that, we can tell people what to do. We can tell people what the best thing is to do. But everybody wants to go their own way, and maybe sometimes to the detriment of the rest of society.
Yeah, it's a big question.
Yeah, personal versus the common good.
Yeah, and one of the other themes that comes up in this book too is just about the career you have as a CIA covert op, and always wondering if this is from your book, always wondering if that new acquaintance was a friend or an enemy.
Yeah, that's the kind of mentality you would have to have and have to live with. And it's the kind of thing that not everybody can do. This is what makes covert operatives really unique people. Not only are they risk takers, they're adventurous, they like to travel. And it's funny how the CIA will often recruit from people who have applied to the Peace Corps, even though they may have completely different ideas of how to run the world. But these are a kind of people who are willing to take risks and go abroad. But the other thing is, how do you live with yourself when you cannot tell the truth to even your closest family members? This is something they have to adjust to. I could never do it. But having talked to the children of spies here in town, several of them had no idea. Their parents died, and they found out through going through their paperwork that dad was a spy. And the light bulb goes off. And I've heard one woman say, all of a sudden, I realized why we had 3 different passports, why we lived in so many countries. Dad always said he was a consultant. We did not know he was with intelligence.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would think that's incredibly challenging to keep those secrets from those you love most of all.
Yes, yes. And children often don't know. The one person that I have heard about who went about blabbing about it to everybody at the yacht club was a man who got Alzheimer's disease. So he lost the filter and then he started talking about it. But for the most part, a lot of people they will take their secrets to the grave as they're supposed to do.
Yeah, to your point, that makes a very special, very unique person that is able to do that.
Yes.
For sure. And their powers of discernment in terms of trust is also amplified.
That has to be a difficult thing. I mean, as I mentioned in the book, you don't know whether this is a real friend or somebody who's trying to get something out of you. To go through life really not trusting, it's got to be hard on the psyche.
Absolutely, which is why it is really invigorating, I think, for this group to be able to be together and share with one another while they'll still take the secrets from their particular missions to the grave. Just having that sense of safety with a group of people who understand that lifestyle and
Right,
understand
right.
those choices that have to be made.
But in this book, even they begin to question each other because of something that goes wrong in this book.
Yeah, as your books often do. But it is a great set. I like Ingrid a lot. The fact that she's married to Lloyd, I think they're just a terrific couple. But she's described early on by Maggie that she had just razor sharp intellect, and instead of just being one step ahead of them when they were training, she was like 3 steps ahead.
Yes,
And
yes.
so
I think of her as the Hermione of the group.
it's yes.
Everybody has their strengths, but Ingrid is very clever. And I think when I was thinking about what this book was about, I was thinking about their marriage. This book was about marriage. It's about Ingrid's marriage to a very different kind of person. What makes them tick? And what if I put that marriage under stress? My goal was to show Lloyd in a new light. Now, we've always thought of Lloyd as he's the ultimate beta male. He's in the kitchen cooking.
Yeah, a wonderful chef. I'd like to have a Lloyd around.
Right. He takes care of his wife. He's never been in the field. And suddenly his marriage is threatened. What does he do? Does he become the hero that I imagine he really is? That was the fun of it, is watching Lloyd kind of evolve into a superhero.
Yeah, and he did such a remarkable job, because this is something that's foreign. He was chained to a desk, didn't do work in the field. So to put him in a completely different environment and see how he reacts,
Yes.
so fun.
Yeah, it was. And he makes mistakes. I mean, he almost gets him and Maggie killed, but
Correct.
he will do anything because he loves this woman. And that's what I wanted to show, was just that incredible devotion of this man towards this woman. And also, it was also fun to talk about, okay, so you're 70. Can you still be tempted into an affair? Is that spark, that zing, still there? And that's what Ingrid has to face, because her former colleague from the CIA, who was also her lover, comes back into her life and could threaten her marriage.
Yeah, Rodrigo.
Rodrigo, I know. I just imagine that, Antonio Banderas. I was seeing him in this role.
That's exactly who I saw as well, but with the long hair.
Yeah.
But even like you talk about describing him, and every room he walks into, he owns. He's completely
Yes.
comfortable, and he just takes up the space as if he's always been there.
Yes.
That's something
Yes.
very few people can do.
It's not just appearance, it's presence. It's the sense of he takes command. There are people who do that. I mean, they walk into a room and everybody looks.
Yes.
And Rodrigo is one of them. And that's pretty hard to resist.
Yes.
Plus he's good looking. So, and here's poor Lloyd standing there with his little martini. How does he compete with this? So that was the fun of watching this marriage under stress.
Absolutely. And Ingrid's also tempted not only by Rodrigo, somebody that she worked with closely and was also her lover previously, but she's also somewhat threatened with what used to be and what she used to do, and how she chased the adrenaline and liked being in the field and liked having that sense of purpose and working on something that mattered. And not to say that when you retire, things no longer matter, but it's a different scale of what matters in retirement versus as an op. And so watching her weigh those decisions as well.
weighing the adrenaline. It's funny. I have my husband's uncle he was in the underground in Holland during World War II. And later, years later, he's now, he was retired. He goes, those were the best years of my life. And you think it was horrible. They were starving. They were fighting. They were putting their lives on the line. But in retrospect, he says those were the best years of my life. So I think that people who have lived through high tension situations, whose adrenaline has been, fueling them, later on when they get older, they do look back on those as their best years of their lives, and they forget all the horrible things that happened.
Well, so often we do. That's the wonderful thing about time and distance is we kind of forget some of that, but hold on to the good. And I'm glad that they're
Yes.
able to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm suddenly flashing back on that song. What is it? Those were the days, my friend.
Yes.
When they're yes, and they think about, when they were young and they were fighting the war, and now they go back and they think about it, and yes, those were the days.
Right. I also think a little bit about those who choose, like this group worked very high pressure jobs, right?
Yes.
A lot on the line for the sake of their country, right? Which is incredibly noble and admirable, to put yourself in situations in harm's way to protect the country and the assets that they're tasked with. But then you do a nice job with Lloyd about the impact that has on those people who are left behind.
Their families, you mean?
Correct.
Yes. To have a job like these people, I like to think, and I do think that for the most part, it is fueled by patriotism. They want to serve their country. They're willing to risk their lives for their country. But there is a cost, not only their danger and their safety, but everybody in their families. They can't tell the truth to their kids. If something happens to them, they leave behind a family, and their families can't even talk about it. I mean, we can't, people within the agency know when somebody dies because that star goes up on the wall, but they may not necessarily know the circumstances. So you are giving your life in a way that you will never be celebrated. That is really dedication.
Yeah. Absolutely. And sometimes I think analogous, not in terms of risk, but in terms of true philanthropists who give because that's what they feel compelled to do. They don't need everybody to know or have things named after them.
Yeah.
To
They do it
know that
anonymously. Yeah.
correct. And
Yeah.
so similar to that star, and people in their field know what they did. But yeah, it has to be hard to know that that's not shared by everybody, especially
Yeah.
their family.
History will not, you'll have that star, but history won't know what you did. So it's dedication.
For sure. The other interesting thing that comes up in this book, because we have covert ops working with the chief of police in a small town, is investigations. And this was something that was pointed out by Ben. And Ben's the one in the group that the muscle of the group, right? The one, if you run
Yes.
into a dark alley, that's who you want, the shaved head, the leather jacket, which is terrific. But at one point, he talks to Maggie because they're trying to figure out this whole case that they're working on. And he says to her, inductive science, that as covert ops, we look at the evidence and try to understand it no matter where it takes us. Not like cops who use evidence to prove what they think they already know.
Yes, yes. Intelligence is it's completely different from law enforcement because they have to follow the evidence, and they have to look at the facts, and they have to, even though their boss, who may be sitting in the White House, may not agree with anything that they come up with, they have to tell the truth, and they have to give their best judgment. Now, they're wrong. They're often wrong. As we can tell, sometimes we're like totally shocked. We were shocked when the Berlin Wall fell, things like that.
Right.
But they're not beholden to a result. They are only beholden to the truth.
Which, again, in that world is a really special person. If you think that they're beholden to the truth to serve their country, which may or may not have that like postscript to what they actually did, and to live with secrets that will never be revealed, that truly is a unique person. And at the same time, they're human beings who are doing this. And
Yes.
human beings, I mean, we're wired for connection. We want to be around other people, but it is hard to figure out who those other people are. And they
Yes,
have it.
That's why they have this group, because in a way, they're the only people they can talk to. And it's unfortunate that after all these years of service, I mean, the agency has changed quite a bit in just the last couple of years. And I do talk about it because you could hear the chatter. You can hear what real people who are losing their jobs at the agency now are saying. There are one of the biggest dangers is that they're laying off people who have been in the agency. And you've got this whole group of disgruntled people who are now leaving the CIA. That is considered a danger because now they have a reason to not be loyal anymore. This could be the possibility of now all of a sudden we're going to get more Aldrich Ameses out there willing to trade secrets because we have damaged them. We have gone back on our word to that we would take care of them.
Right, which is such an important part of maintaining our integrity, I believe, as a nation and of that particular agency to keep people safe. And when you damage the integrity of that really becomes a huge kerfuffle. Yeah.
I also bring up the subject of private intelligence agencies, which I mean, commercial agencies. There are people out there who are making money off intelligence. It doesn't mean that they're spying on countries, but it does mean that they're useful to private industry. If you want a spy who this corporation, you want to know what they're developing. Yeah, you can go to a private intelligence agency and get some information. So they're out there for hire, and I think a lot of them are manned by former intelligence agents
because they have that skill set that's been honed.
Yes.
To understand the value of information.
Yes, and they have what we call collectors. These are people that are very well placed, either in politics or in business or in law enforcement, to find the answers you're looking for. If you want a dossier on a political candidate, for instance, you can go to a private intelligence agency and say, here's the money. I want to find out every piece of dirt you can find on this particular candidate. And, our own parties are doing that to each other. So
correct. Right. It's always kind of interesting that how money motivates people.
Yeah, there's money to be made out there, definitely.
The other thing that comes up in this book is the difference and the distinction between justice versus revenge.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about?
My characters are morally, what's the word? They are not entirely straight arrow. Sometimes they will bend the ethics a little bit to get what they want. And there's a scene that I was laughing through when I was doing it, where they accidentally get the wrong guy. And the question is, what should we do with him? Should we waterboard? They don't know he's the wrong guy yet. Should we waterboard him? Should we torture him? We need this answer now. And of course, Jo Thibodeau, who's the cop, finds out about this, and she is appalled. She's like, you can't do this. And then they say, well, we would have done it in a different jurisdiction, so it wouldn't have been your problem. But there's that moral ambiguity that goes along with keeping your country safe, not always doing the ethical thing, but sometimes the ends justify the means.
The words right out of my mouth, because that's exactly what I was going to say. And then you introduce, so you have this Martini Club, fabulous. You have Joe, who's local police, chief of police, and then because of what happens, next thing you know, the FBI descends, right? So there's an agent that shows up sitting right in Joe's office.
Poor guy.
And shocked. Like, I've never met a female woman chief of police. And she's like, we're everywhere. Get with it. But before he goes to interview somebody that they've brought in to question, he wants her take on the individual. And he says to her something about like, well, what's his gestalt? What's your feeling? And she's like, everything's in my report. But he wants to know the things that we know as human beings that we can't always quite articulate or put in to a particular report, because typically those types of reports are the facts and the facts only. We don't editorialize. Mm-hmm. So I thought it was really interesting.
Well, he's asking a very good question because he's in a small town, and she knows the personalities. She grew up there. She knows everybody in town. So a good investigator would ask the local cop, what do you really think is going on? And poor Jo, she can't tell the truth because she would be betraying her 5 spy friends. And Jo is a person who She always tells the truth. So this is causing her a lot of stress that she can't, that she has to lie to this FBI person. So I sort of put her in the middle of the investigation where she's torn in different directions.
For sure. She's torn in different directions. And the other thing is she's got such a big heart. This is her
Yes.
town. She was born and raised, grew up there. Now she's the chief of police, and there is clearly a threat to their particular town. And on her day off, she decides this is my town, and she drives around just to make sure everything is kind of as it should be. It's kind of like when there's a baby upstairs asleep, how we go and we check just to make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
And she kind of does that same thing for her town because she feels such a sense of loyalty to her town and her community to keep them safe.
Well, I feel like up here in Maine we have a lot of people like that. We're a very, very small town. It's a spread out state, but really we're a very small town. And you look at these small towns, and these cops, they maybe have 2 cops in their entire force, and they have a town of 1,000 people. But that's what they do. So it's, in a way, it's a tribute to, I guess, living in small town Maine.
Which is terrific. I have my cousin and his wife live in Maine. So beautiful language in this book as well. I mean, there's the great heart pounding action of this threat that looms over, and that sense of unease about who can you trust, and is somebody really capable of doing this that you thought you knew. Then there's beautiful language interspersed in this as well. And you talk about Ingrid, and she sagged against the trunk of an old tree, so solid, so reliable, unlike memories which can twist and deform, as untrustworthy as smoke. Dang. It's a beautifully written line.
Thank you. Thank you. They just happen.
I don't know if it just happens, but it beautifully written. And even things like, this was the price of living a lie. Loneliness. And I think about some of the people who may have had that former careers covert ops and don't have a Martini Club, don't have a group of friends that understand kind of the life that they chose, and how isolating that must feel when, your career is done. What do you do next?
Right. I mean, do you just collect your gold watch and walk out of the office, and that's it, into the sunset? It is sad to think that they might be out there with no one to talk to. So I wish them all a community, and I think there is a good community of former.
There's probably a community we don't know about too, right?
Well, just looking around my town where we have so many retirees from intelligence agencies throughout the state of Maine, they somehow were attracted here, and there's a good question about why, and I keep getting different answers when I ask this question.
What are some of the answers?
Well, some of the answers is that this used to be a place where for safe houses. So if they wanted you to disappear for a while, they'd send you up to Maine, and people liked it and stayed. The other explanation, which is probably from is that when the CIA was first coming out of the OSS, which is a preceding agency, a lot of the agents were recruited from Ivy League schools like Yale and Harvard. And these were well-to-do people from well-to-do families who spent their summers in Maine. So this was their childhood retirement dream anyway, and they just came here because they were into yachting and they flew their planes, and this is a place where they would come.
Nature and hiking in the trails.
Right.
The waterfront.
But I just know we have a lot of them. And I mean, not just George H.W. Bush, who was down in Kennebunkport. I mean, he was the head of the CIA.
Right.
But we have a lot right here in the mid-coast.
You must feel very safe in the town in which you live.
I feel very well educated because every time I go to the Camden conference and I watch my neighbors stand up and ask the most incisive questions, I think, how did you know that? And then you think, oh, I know, you were one of them.
One of them, right. What other topic would you like to see covered during one of those conferences? What else is intriguing to you?
The last conference we had was a humdinger. The topic was the threat to democracy. And they were talking about how democracies are failing around the world, and how do you pull it back from the brink? How did Poland get pulled back from the brink? And and how did the Philippines somehow get pulled back from the brink? And are we too far gone? I mean, are we, sliding into fascism. So it brought in experts and historians from around the country. That was fascinating, but it was also pretty depressing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, these things tend to be depressing. And I believe next year's conference is going to be about China. So they try to focus on, a lot of times they will focus on a geographical area of the world.
Okay. Yeah, it's fascinating when you have a group of people like that that are incredibly educated and have such different perspectives. It helps because it eliminates that groupthink mentality.
Yeah. Yeah. They
So,
don't always agree with each other. And that's
no,
what I
and
love
that's
is
the
to see the
fun.
debate. Yeah. But
Yeah,
they all come from places of being well informed.
right. So it just, I guess, further reinforces the takeaway that how valuable information has. And as a librarian, I think, yeah, absolutely. If you have information, if you have knowledge, need to say knowledge is power, but the more informed you are, hopefully that leads to better choices
Hmm.
than if you're willfully ignorant.
Well, I think that those who are well informed, unfortunately, have to deal with the masses who are uninformed. So it's a question of who is making the decisions, and let's hopefully the people making the decisions know what they're doing.
Right. The other thing that comes up, and it comes up early in the book, so I know this is not a spoiler, is just the threat of the Russians and Moscow and the stiletto,
Yes.
talking about that as a weapon of choice.
Interesting, because I'm doing my research of finding out about the Vori, the
Yes.
underworld, the Russian underworld, which has been in existence for, since the 1930s or something. These are gangsters. This is an organization that arose out of prisons in Russia. And now they are like an international mafia. They're for hire. You can get them to do just about anything. So it made sense that if Putin wanted to assassinate somebody and he didn't want to use his own people, he would just hire these killers. And we've seen so many assassinations over the last 20 years. I saw one estimate of 50 people. If they're falling out of windows, they get hit by cars, their cars blow
Yes.
up, and they're not necessarily defectors or spies. They're just people who are enemies, like enemy bankers or enemy journalists. If he doesn't like you, you do have to look over your shoulder. So part of the book is about this threat of assassination if you are on Moscow's hit list and the different ways they do it. I
Yeah.
point out polonium because I always find polonium a fascinating way to kill
Yes.
somebody. Partly
Right.
because it's really hard to diagnose, especially if you're just, somebody comes into the hospital with a gastrointestinal complaint and then they die. You're not going to think polonium if you're a doctor. You're going to think, oh, he picked up some horrible bug. So I'm sure there are undiagnosed cases of this kind of death.
Right. And I think you use the phrase that's often used in medicine when you hear hoofbeats, you think horses, not zebras.
Right, right.
To your nod to polonium. And then not only is it so incredibly lethal, it's incredibly easy to transport. That's the
Yes,
thing that I learned. It's not like you have to carry it in some gigantic container that is protected by this, which is protected by this, which is protected by this. I mean, it's between that
it's
and a few.
very simple.
Right.
It doesn't, you can just carry it in a water bottle and somebody has to ingest it to kill them. So that's why there were all these jokes about polonium tea, that how easy it is to kill somebody, and it doesn't cause a threat to the person who's doing the killing. Now, the only issue with polonium is that it's probably pretty expensive to manufacture, but there's only one country that is manufacturing it, and yes, it's Russia.
Yeah. Wow. I learned so much in terms of the Russian underworld, the stiletto, even the marking on the handle
The
was a
Vori
dot
marking,
within
yeah.
a dot within a circle.
Yeah, they have a number of sort of tattoos that they like to put on themselves to identify themselves or to proudly say that, yes, I'm a member of the Brotherhood. And that was one of the tattoos that you would sometimes find on people.
Yeah, and I think you said in there that it was a symbol for a lone wolf that meant rely only on yourself,
Yes, yes,
which
it's
was
very
chilling. When
symbolic.
I read that, I was like, "Ooh,
Well, let's just hope that they don't get wind of this and put me on the enemies list. That's all.
heck no, heck no." I hope not, for sure. So, just the other thing that comes up, and I know we talked a little bit about it, the secrets that people keep from those close to them, and the other thing is working that closely with people. And it's not like me being a librarian where if somebody doesn't return their book on time, nothing really bad happens, right?
Or so you say.
So I know we did eliminate overdue fines, but some of the things that could go wrong in my world, certainly not to the same scale for somebody who's a covert op. But you work closely with people. You spend a lot of time with the people that you work with in your office, in the library, in the hospital, the clinic, whatever. But how friendship, like marriage, can blind one to the truth, which came up in the book about sometimes we're so close we don't see what somebody could really be capable of.
Well, just think about how many wives are taken aback when they find out their husbands are serial killers. This
I never
there are
knew.
there are so many secrets that people are capable of hiding. And that's why my group of spies has to always question even their friends who they think they know. Do
Right.
we know that Ingrid is actually not a Russian defector? Do we know that she is actually loyal to us? And it's something they probably learned, or maybe that's the kind of person they are and why they ended up being recruited, that it's an inherent distrust, and always paying attention, always looking for the possibility that someone is not telling the truth.
Always looking and observing. So I don't know whether it's nature, nurture. This is who that person was, just who happened to be in the way their brain is wired, and then or had the propensity towards it, and then when they go through training, that really is honed and fine tuned
Yeah. Yeah.
because so much is at stake when they're working on these and in these incredibly dangerous situations.
Well, I think about how hard it is to find moles inside the agency, how moles have been overlooked by their colleagues again and again, and they go and cause enormous damage. So again, they have to learn to always keep their antennae up, because so-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, who's been a loyal agent for all these years, could still be a turncoat, could still be working for Moscow on the side. And it's a hard life, I would think, a hard way to go through life, to always question your friendships.
Well, even that to your point earlier about always looking over your shoulder. I mean, even though Maggie's retired and Ingrid's retired and Declan and Sam are retired, they still look over their shoulder. And then at some points they talk a little bit about like, oh, am I getting soft? Am I letting my guard down? And starting to question themselves because after a certain point that would have to become exhausting to
Well,
constantly live in that
that's
hyper vigilant state.
it's an effective aging too. You always question, have I lost it? It doesn't matter whether you're a writer or you're a secret agent. It's always like, did
Yeah.
I lose my edge?
Yeah.
But I think that they're undergoing the normal doubts of aging. I mean, their muscles aren't as strong as they used to be,
Mm.
but what they always valued was their intellect, and to lose that, I think, would be terrifying.
And I think that's why I like your books, period, but I like this series in particular is because it's looking at slightly older and you're still celebrating their intellect and still
Yes,
acknowledging their intellect. And I think that's such an important thing. I think so many people want to write others off. We talked about it earlier about they're just dismissed. Nobody's curious about what their backstory is or what their origin is or,
yeah.
how they came to be grocery shopping for orange juice at 3 a.m. But
Well, that is one thing I've learned living in this community is, always, never underestimate what this old lady has been doing, or that old man at the post office. They have interesting backstories.
yeah, and I think that's the thing. I think so many times in today's day and age, I feel like we're in such a rush and we're pulled in a gazillion different directions. But just being able to sit down and have conversations with people is such a wonderful thing to be able to do. It's part of the reason why I have a scheduled phone date with my cousin and his wife to hear about
Yeah.
their trip. But yeah, if we take the time, if we just slow down and take the time to get to know people, how much greater life is when you hear those backstories and find something that you have in common rather
Yeah.
than what you think makes you distinctly different. As we wrap up, this is Stories End. Final 5 questions. This time has actually flown by so fast. I can't believe it. So, what book would people be surprised to see on your bookshelf?
Gosh. I don't think anybody would be surprised about any of my books, because they know they know what kind of a writer I am. I mean, okay, right now behind me is my crime and forensics and medical collection. So probably something there about bugs. I don't know.
Oh my God. Yeah, I've learned by reading a lot of these things that bugs tell a story of how long something's been
Yeah.
somewhere.
Oh, I have a large collection in Egyptology, because that was one of my passions when I was in undergraduate. So maybe that would interest people.
Absolutely.
Ask me how to mummify a body. I can tell you. So
Okay, there we go. I'll watch your DMs blow up like crazy. So I'm asking for a friend.
yes,
How do I mummify a body? Sweet or salty?
salty.
Okay. Which member of the Martini Club would you travel with, and where would you go?
Oh, I would travel with Lloyd because he eats well and he's not going to be too taxing on me.
There you go. Perfect. Where would you go?
Where would we go? Well, you know what? You know where I'm going in a couple of weeks? I'm going to Madagascar. It's on my bucket list. So I would take
Very
Lloyd.
cool.
I'd probably have to drag him through the jungle, though. I'm not sure he could keep up with me. But you can bet he would find the best restaurants.
But yeah, being the analyst, he very thoroughly researched to find the best food and the best
Right.
place to stay. Absolutely. And all the fun facts about what animals you're going to see that you didn't know. Fun
Yes,
facts
yes.
about-
He's kind of like a librarian himself.
Yes. What's the most interesting piece of research you found when writing this series?
I would have to say about the Vori, the Russian hitmen. I was not really aware of them until I started looking for how do you hire a hitman?
Please tell me that you use not use a Google
A VPN.
search.
Yeah. Yeah, I found that really fascinating that they exist.
I think it's so great when you all are doing research and the things that make it into your book that you wouldn't have known until you start the research process that sends all of us down rabbit holes to find out even more.
Yeah.
Because I found myself looking to learn more about this particular organization.
Yeah.
And then the final question, what song is always on a road trip playlist?
You know what? I don't play music when I'm on a road trip. I like silence. And that's when I think. Some of my best plot points have come to me while I was driving, but in
Really?
silence. Yeah. Yeah.
That's fascinating. In our family, we call that windshield time.
Yeah.
We have something on our mind. We go for
Yes.
a drive and you turn everything off and just kind of sit with it.
It's amazing how driving motion where you don't have to pay attention so much to the driving itself really unlocks parts of your brain that have been blocked on. I've solved so much writer's block just taking a drive.
That's awesome because your books are fantabulous. So may you always be able to drive. If not, you let me know. I'll drive you. A huge thank you to everybody who is listening. An even bigger thank you to Tess Gerritsen, whose new book in the Martini Club series, The Shadow Friends, just published this week. Congratulations. If you're looking for a book about what retirement looks like after a career as a spy with an unbeatable ensemble cast, The Shadow Friends is the book for you. If you're looking for a book about the tension and possible complications from a career spent keeping secrets, The Shadow Friends is the book for you. If you're looking for a book packed with action and possible global catastrophes, which is balanced with a group of friends committed to preventing these possibilities, The Shadow Friends is the book for you. To find out who else will be joining me in conversation, go to StoryToCount.com. This is Story to Count with Jen Jumba.